Hey everyone, welcome back to my watercolor tutorial videos for Procreate. Today we're going to paint a simple, sort of primitive palm leaf illustration like this one. And although this is a pretty simple illustration, I want to use it as a chance to show you two neat techniques that I recently discovered with watercolor painting in Procreate. So the first thing I'm going to do is start out with a new blank watercolor paper texture, and I'll use the normal paper texture for this. And I'm going to do pretty much all of this with the abstract round brush, so I'll use the normal brush kit as well. And I'll put links to both of those in the description down below. So I'm going to grab the HB pencil brush, and I'll just do a quick sketch of this palm leaf. And there we go. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to use the arrow tool to kind of reposition it on the artboard. And then I'll lower the transparency of that sketch just so I can barely see it. And then on a different layer, I'll use the abstract round brush to add some color. So if you want your leaf here to be like this kind of green, I think you should start with a lighter version of that color, sort of as a base color. And then I'm just going to go in there and add some color to these leaves. There we go. So I've done the first layer of color, and at this point I can switch off the sketch. I really don't need it anymore. And then I'll go in with the eraser brush and just sort of sharpen a few of these leaves, because they did end up being a little bit too rounded for my liking. So next, I'm going to show you the first trick that I want to kind of showcase in this video. I'll make a new layer, and I'm going to select a darker version of that green color, and I'm going to use the abstract round brush to just go over these leaves again, but I'm going to do it much rougher this time, paying a lot less attention to sort of lining up with the previous layer there. There, so I have a kind of sloppy version on a different layer. So I have the original one, and then I have the sloppy version here. And this one I'm going to use the water blender on. And let me turn on the background so we can see it better. But I'm just going to make sure I'm on the sloppy version, and I'll use the water blender to just mix up the edge of that here. And just sort of blend that sloppy version all over the place. And just sort of use it to add some darker areas to the lighter version. There we go. And you could go in and carefully erase the edge of that, but it would take, seriously, it would take forever. I only want this darker color to be on top of the previous version. I don't want it to be in the white area. So I want to show you a way where I'm going to go through and cut all of that out. So let me turn off the that version there, and I'll go to the previous version. This is the neat one. This is the one we don't want to modify, but I'm going to use it as a mask. So let me grab the selection tool, and I'll set it to automatic. And if I click over here in the white, and I stay clicked on the artboard, and I slide it, at some point when you slide it, everything will sort of turn blue. And that's good, but if you look over here, you can see black is sort of creeping in, right? I don't want that. I just want the blue to cover only the background or the white area. So I'm going to slide my pen around until it's just barely on the edge. So all the white is blue, but none of my palm frond has that sort of black thing happening to it. So that means I've just selected the white. Now if I go to the layers panel and I go to the sloppy version, the darker color, and I turn that layer on, the selection is still active. And if I click on that and click clear, it basically goes through and cuts out everything that goes beyond the edge of this one. So we basically use this one as a mask, but a mask after the fact. So that might have looked like a magic trick at first, but I think if you watch this part again, maybe even 2 times, I think you'll see exactly what I did, and it's a really handy technique. So now I have these 2 layers, and what that technique let me do is add this sort of secondary, interesting kind of blending effect, and this is purely just for texture, just because I like the way that looks and it sort of suits the primitive style here. So since I'm happy with the level of transparency there, I'm just going to go ahead and merge those 2 layers together, just to keep everything a little bit easier to work with. And now I want to go in and add some random color variation. So I'll grab the selection tool, set to freehand, and I'll just do a random selection like this. I'll feather it out quite a bit, and then I'll just shift the hue, but just a little bit. I don't want to get carried away. Just a little bit towards blue. It's a pretty subtle effect, but I'm going to do it again. But I'm going to try to do it in some different areas. There we go, and I'll feather that one out, but a little bit less this time. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness. And this time I'll shift it in the other direction, just to make those areas a little bit warmer. There we go, I'm happy with that. And now for the second trick I want to show you guys, I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to grab a different brush this time that I don't think I've used in any other tutorials, the mist brush. Actually, I think I used this in the moth tutorial, but I can't remember. But grab the mist brush and use a green color, but a pretty dark, pretty desaturated green color. So at a pretty small size, I'm just going to go down the middle of these, each of these leaves, and draw that sort of soft, almost airbrushed line. There we go. So I've gone down the center of each of those leaves, and I'll set this layer to multiply. And I'm going to grab the eraser tool and clean up anywhere I accidentally went over the edge. Now what I'm going to do is zoom in on each leaf and use the eraser tool to erase just down the center. And then I'm going to finish erasing one side of that sort of airbrushed line. But you can see what this does here is it creates an interesting highlight on just one side of the leaf. So I'm going to go through and do that to every one of these leaves. There we go. So I've gone through each leaf and erased just one half of that kind of soft airbrushed line. And I'll go to my layers panel, and it's already on multiply, and I'm just going to lower the opacity to 0 and just slowly raise it back up until I can barely see that effect. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and merge those two layers together. And now, as a final touch to finish this up, I'm going to do another color variation, sort of random selection here. And I'll soften that one up. I'll mess with the hue a little bit, maybe darken it just a little bit. And then I'm going to use it again, and this time I'm just going to select one half, just sort of try to go down the middle like that. And I'm going to feather it, but just a few percent. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'll raise the brightness of just that one side. And then lower the saturation. And there we go. That's how I'd paint a pretty large format primitive palm leaf. And it might be hard to see in the video, but if I zoom in here, you can see that this has a lot of texture, and I'm really excited to see what this looks like when I print it out. So that pretty much wraps it up. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.